Hey everybody, it's Retro DM Ray. Hey, I'm back with you on the channel for a moment. I thought I would go back and kind of restart my videos on my look at the Forbidden Lands. And I want to share with you something from the Player's Handbook today. So if you're liking my content on my channel, as always, please like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you click that bell icon so you'll get notified when I upload more videos. Thank you for all of you who have subbed already. I'm still pushing really hard for that 500. Thank you for all of you who have commented lately. Some good discussions going on. I really appreciate that. All right, so let's get into this. So if you have a player's handbook for the Forbidden Lands, I'm starting on page 6, and I want to read you just a few things here on page 6. First of all, it says to explore the Forbidden Lands, you'll use the big map in the box. That's the double-sided hex map from the box that I showed you before. It's divided into 10 different types of terrains and has a hexagonal grid that'll help you navigate through the wilderness. All right. And then the next section talks about if you look closer at the big map, you'll find small symbols in many of the hexes. They denote 3 kinds of adventure sites: villages, castles, and dungeons. An adventure site is an exciting location your adventure can visit, filled with intrigue, horror, and treasure. There are 3 complete adventure sites described in the Game Master's Guide, as well as a plethora of tools for the GM to create their own adventure sites using dice. Then it says when the game begins, your adventurers don't know much more than you do as players. The blood mist covered the land for centuries, and contact between the different regions of the Forbidden Lands has been sporadic. The history of the land has been forgotten or become myth. During the course of the game, you will discover the history and secrets of the Forbidden Lands piece by piece. This happens through so-called legends, short stories about a place, a person, or an artifact. Okay, then it talks about this section under search for some items. It says, dark powers are stirring in the Forbidden Lands. Zygopher's henchmen, the feared Rust brothers, still haunt the land, but the spellbinder himself has not been seen for centuries. His enemies and his allies are setting plans in motion. The blood mist covering the land has lifted, and the deathly calm that has reigned for so long is about to shatter. So later on in that section, it's not one of the other campaigns called Raven's Purge. It's not a linear story. It has no set goal that your adventurers are expected to follow. Instead, is a rich tapestry of legends, locations, characters, and events that you can interact with in a multitude of ways. And then it goes on page 7 to talk about what you could do with your money after you've come back from ancient ruins alive, and your other treasures, and eventually you might want to settle down and spend some of that treasure on something that lasts, which is a stronghold. So this is throwback things to old Dungeons and Dragons games like that. But it's talking about something in particular that I read this article. It was on paperspencils.com/howdoyouhexcrawl. Okay? And in the article he says, it's entirely possible that I'm just stupid. There have been many times when I felt certain that what I was looking for didn't exist, only to be proven humiliatingly wrong the moment I opened my mouth about it. Having said that, I've never seen a good explanation of how the nitty-gritty of hex crawling is supposed to work. In the past, when I've said this in a public space, I've been given links to some ostensible explanations. However, interesting these links might be, they tend to focus on how Hexcrawl ought to work in theory, and have never satisfied my curiosity about the practical, at-the-table mechanics of running one. I'm sure there are people out there who know exactly how a Hexcrawl should run in practice, but unless any of them want to explain it to me, I guess I'm going to need to make up the rules myself. Just for the sake of being comprehensive, I'm going to start with the absurdly basic stuff. So, the reason why I read just that little bit of the section of that article, and you can follow along with the rest of that article if you'd like to, is I remember something of my own back in the day when I was playing old school Dungeons & Dragons. And here it was. I don't remember that we actually hex crawled, like ever. I think when we played B2 Keep on the Borderlands, the hexes that were on that map around the keep and the swamp that was there, the marshlands, the forests above, the things in the forest there, and the plains around that area, with bandits and all those issues like that. I remember crawling around in those areas, quote unquote, and we had adventures there. And I think if I look back on them, they're very similar to Forbidden Lands. Those were adventure sites, and we would move from one adventure site or location to the next adventure site or location. And along the way, we might have some quote unquote random encounters. Okay. And that's kind of the way our DM ran that. Now, also, I remember very vaguely that when we played Isle of Dread, it was a similar thing of crawling through the jungles on that island from one adventure location or adventure site to another to discover them. But here's the thing. I wonder how many people really know how to do hex crawling and have really actually ever done true hex crawling. And here's what I mean by that. If you're just moving from one adventure site or location to another adventure site or location, you've cleared that area. Now you're moving to the next one to clear that area. There's nothing wrong with that, except for that's not true hex crawling. That is moving along a map. That is a little bit like Warcraft or StarCraft, if you remember those old PC games. That's kind of the way that is, but I don't think that's true hex crawling. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun. But this game is designed to cause you to want to hex crawl, and it can't just be random encounters that spice up the travel time, quote unquote, between one hex or series of hexes to another hex or series of hexes. Again, there's nothing wrong with that intermittent travel time and playing that out. I think that's great. I think it has value. I'd rather do that as opposed to then just hand wave it and skip from one site to the next. You're basically moving from one investigative scene in combat to another investigative scene with combat. You're just kind of moving around the board. I'm not sure that's a whole lot different than checkers as far as basic strategy is concerned. Probably boring. The DM has to really work to spice it up and make it better than that. And there are lots of things. You've seen some videos on my channel that have lots of different things that you can use to spice up all of those things, and helps and books of tables and all kinds of things to create what appears to be totally random into some kind of coherent or cohesive travel situation that is an adventure as the journey progresses in between those locations and across those hexes. So it's all one seamless long adventure travel time. That's just as much the adventure as it was the previous site and as it will be in the new adventure site that you arrive at. Okay? The reason why I say that is Mutant Year Zero from Free League, Forbidden Lands here, Gen Lab Alpha, which is another Mutant Year Zero, and Mechatron, which is another Mutant Year Zero. And I think probably to some extent Coriolis from Free League Publishing. I haven't reviewed that one yet. Haven't got a chance to get into that yet. They're all based on the same thing. And I think it's a wonderful same thing that they're based on. The question is, who's actually really done that detailed hex crawling like that to make that crawl just as much of the game as the adventure site that you arrive at is as much of the game. It's just an interesting thing to think about. I'm sure there are great videos out there about it. I'd encourage you to check out Daniel's videos on Bandits Keep. He's probably got some good stuff about that. The Dungeon Minister on his videos, some when he does with his kids and his wife, some of that travel time stuff he talks about. He certainly is a great storyteller with their campaign. So please check out his videos. But I don't think they really hex crawl either, so to speak, although they do move around the map. I haven't seen really, really good, solid hex crawls. I'd love to see some good, and by good, I mean G-rated, family-friendly, and I might just be wishing into the wind for that in today's world. But anyway, I'd like to see some good G-rated, family-friendly Forbidden Lands hex crawling actually taking place, to watch those plays to see how it actually plays out. What the struggle is the motivation, for one. And I think the other struggle is not hand-waving it. And then I think the last struggle is this, which is really difficult. How do you take players who are only used to adventure seeding and adventure directing and narratively text-driven adventuring? How do you take those players and turn all those switches off and say, you've created your characters, here's kind of where you're set up and a little bit about what's going on in the world. Here's the seed. Now I'm just going to sit back and arbitrate and guide with the rule guidelines, present the NPCs, the challenges and situations to you, but you have full control as to which ones you're going to go to, where and why, and for how long. That's really difficult. It's difficult to take players that are pre-programmed with that mindset and then back them up to this mindset. That might just be my opinion and might just be my problem. Please put in the comments if you have a similar problem or have had a similar problem and how you've overcome it. If you haven't overcome it, anything else you can add to the conversation would be great. But I wanted to start this particular video in that way before I begin to cover some other things that I'm gonna show on the screen for you that is in Forbidden Lands. All right, so we don't need to cover the section on what is a role-playing game. Everyone that's linked to my channel, that's subscribed to my channel, watches stuff on my channel, is no doubt already familiar with what a role-playing game is. So we're not going to cover that together. We have covered character creation step by step, so you can watch that video on my channel as well. But what I am going to cover now is I'm going to cover the different kin. And I'm going to kind of talk about how it sits with me in relation to my old school gaming past. And if there's any differences I see or kind of feel there in this game, because I think this game has such an amazing old school feeling, even though it's not truly old school in the sense of mechanics and things like that. So the first kin we're going to look at, and that's Free League's word for a race, or if you want to use a Pathfinder term, it's ancestry, whatever you want to call it. It's your thing. That's fine. Free League calls them kin. Okay. Here's what the entry says on one of the first kin. This first kin is human. See here in the picture, she looks really, really cool. Nice armor, nice weapon, great art, great line out in here from Niels Gullikson. Just outstanding. Great feel of this book from this artwork is just amazing. For human, it says humans came to Ravenland as intruders. So there's some story possibilities all ready to start. Yet you have earned the respect of the other kin by showing them what organization and skill can do. While some fear or dislike you, the more open-minded among the native kin should understand that humans are a blessing. If only they could see past their prejudices, while also giving up some land and gold, of course. So again, more motivational inspiration there. Some of your ancestors came with the armies from Alderland to fight against elves, dwarves, and orcs. So there's some history that you may not know. Others sought sanctuary from the war as refugees and settlers. You came from across the southern mountains, or rode from Asleen in the west, and stayed after the din of battle faded. The roads were closed, and demons feasted on whatever remained. Again, just a good amount of inspiration right there. When the blood mist fell like a shroud across Ravenland, your ancestors were forced to huddle together for 10 generations, till the soil, and simply try to survive. That says a lot. Forbidden Lands is all about survival and resources as you, quote unquote, crawl in the hexes on the map. Okay, very important part of the game. Take that out of the game, and I think you break it. But now the mist has lifted, and the world has opened up again. You have exchanged the plow for a sword. You were born here, and you will take what you want, whether those who stand in your way be other humans or even stranger beings. So, a sense of the human motivation and spirit there coming out in that explanation. Okay, again, great inspiration, old school feeling that comes from this. This write-up of a human here, it feels like, without a doubt, first edition, right? Because of the immediate inspirational greed, the inspirational prejudice that's listed there, and the giving up of land and gold, of course, all those kinds of things, right? So that feels very first edition Dungeons and Dragons-esque. I love that. All right. Next one on the list here is the elf. Again, really cool picture. Again, a she. Awesome decked out armor right there. Massive sword. Perhaps a little atypical in sword size for an elf that I would normally picture. But again, I'm stuck on some old D&D art. And I would also say to some extent, I'm also stuck on sorry about that. Some of the Tolkien stuff, where certainly a female elf would not have a sword of that size. But hey, that's cool. That's just my particular literary influences on my games, right? It says, at the dawn of time, you fell like a rain of glimmering rubies scattered across the land by the red wanderer of the heavens. Your task was to cover the barren land in life, for the wanderer wished to lay his eyes on beauty. You clothed yourself in flesh and coaxed plants from the ground so that soon you could walk singing through the lush forests of Ravenland, to the joy of the wanderer. The god Clay drew animals from the mud, fish and toads from the mires, and birds from the clouds. The great craftsman gave you the task of shepherding them, with the dwarves preparing the ground for your art. Then the humans arrived. Their raven god bought half the land for them and gave you the orcs in exchange. Wow, okay, so there's some inspirational background for elves. Again, first edition prejudice built right in, right? And I think that's great. But the humans' intentions were false, and they soon attacked you, with demons in tow. Since you were few in number, you sent the orcs into battle, but those creatures failed you. Your elders claim that everything will return to the way things were if you only wait. That humankind will wither and eventually die, just as time eats away at all the stoneless kin. But the younger among you do not want to wait. While some desire to coexist with the humans peacefully, a growing number say the upstarts must be driven out. So, I mean, we're talking Thranduil, right, in Mirkwood here. Versus the Lothlorien elves, maybe, or the Rivendell elves. Let's just wait them out, right? It's interesting, the approach here for elves, again, pointing directly to, for me anyway, to first edition Dungeons & Dragons. I love that. What a great amount of inspiration for character play you have already built into this description, right? Again, old school. Okay, everyone, let me first preface this by saying that first I apologize for the previous audio. There's some stuff on that audio that might be hard for you to understand me. It turns out that my lavalier mic that I have for my USB connection for my phone really just stinks and is on the fritz and is going out or has already gone out. I don't know which one it is. And so I'm having to pick back up where I was before. And I had just finished talking about the elves. And I noticed one place in particular where I was mentioning Thranduil. And Thranduil was in Mirkwood. And I don't believe that came out properly on the microphone. Maybe some other things didn't either. If that's the case, I'm sorry for that. But I lost pretty close to half of what I had been presenting to you. So I'm back now to continue the discussion. And the other thing that I was going to do was also let you know that the picture there for when I was talking about human there at the end made the transition into elf, and I showed the elven female picture, but what I did not show you was the elven male picture. And that's because the elven male picture to me on page 17 is a crossover picture that looks like it could be a male elf or could be a male half-elf, either one. So I'm including that picture within the half-elf description that I'm going to cover for you right now. So here we go. Half-elf. You are the best of two kin, born from the union of humans and elves after they traded hostages during this shift. You were conceived because those things that are good, strong, and vibrant always find their way to each other. Your elven ancestors taught you the ways of magic, granted you wisdom and long life, but you rejected their torpid languor. Your human ancestors gave you vigor, but you rejected their foolishness and falsehood, as well as their smell and their crude appearance. You are the future. Both elves and humans know it in their hearts, but let them be blind to your superiority if they can't stomach realities. The half-elves are the crown of creation, and you will mold the world into what the gods and your own glorious kin intended. So you see the picture there of that female sorcerer there, or sorceress, half-elf. And that is a really, really awesome piece of line art there. But I will tell you that the half-elf, I mean, look at all that packed inspiration that's right in there. They talk about the trading of hostages during the shift and how you were the union of the human elves during that time, right? You were conceived because of those things that are strong, good, and vibrant that always find their way to each other. You were taught magic, you were granted wisdom and long life, but you rejected the human torpid languor, or the elven torpid languor. In other words, the waiting everything out to die, right? Your human ancestors gave you vigor, and you rejected their foolishness and falsehood, as well as their smell and crude appearance. You are the future. Wow. That is pretty cool inspiration and pretty prejudiced approach and view of the world, I think, too, again, for half-elves. And I think you can see that you are the future, not necessarily so much presented in the sorceress's face of this half-elf, but when you transition to see this male half-elf picture here, you can see in his face that he likely fully has bought into and believes that he and his half-elf brethren and sisters are the future. He fully buys into the fact that elves and humans know it in their hearts, but just let them be blind to your superiority if they can't stomach reality. I just absolutely love how that's there in the half-elf, and what great ways to play that character, right? Certainly all of these kin, if played in these deep ways like this, are going to have some struggles at the table, just in case you want to know. Not that we didn't have that in old school D&D back in the days when we played first edition either, because those prejudices were very much a real thing. There's a table in the player's handbook that actually gives reactions from one race to another against each other and against the others around them, and whether you'll be friends or whether you'll be neutral or whether you'll just hate their guts. So that's reflected in this too. Then you have Dwarf. Here's what it says. In the beginning, the god Huge gave your ancestors a small pebble and the task of building a world around it. They stoked their forges and sang their stone songs, so their words took hold and the sphere grew. Over many generations, the dwarves expanded the sphere. Soon, the curve of the world was barely visible. And so, you will continue building into the sphere's reach, so that it will eventually reach the god's fiery hearth in the sky. The feeble elves were given the task of growing grass and trees across the surface of the sphere, to keep it moist and prepare it for new layers, like the carpenter who prepares a wooden surface before it is glued to another. Thus the elves have a task to fulfill, and you accept them. All right, so if that's not dripping with stuff right there. So the dwarves are the ones that are the real builders, and continue to reach for the god's fiery hearth in the sky, while you have feeble elves given the tasks. And just like a carpenter glues a wood surface, as in it's only temporarily forced together, it's not molded and shaped like the dwarves can do with stone. That's the implication here, right? And then it says, the elves have a task to fulfill, and you accept them. As if they're not fulfilling that task, then they're kind of useless, right? The arrival of humans slowed down your holy task of building the world. Well, there's some animosity towards humans. They slowed you down in your holy task. So you've been given a divine and holy task from the gods, unlike any other race. So there's some conceit. I think that's cool. And you were given the orcs as servants in exchange for a piece of the forged land. But orcs have limited skills and questionable loyalty, as was displayed in the inevitable war that broke out. Humans may be resourceful, but have no purpose, and thus fail to understand their work as the chosen ones of Huge. Or understand your work as the chosen ones of Huge. I'm sorry. I can't even read tonight. Sorry about that. So again, they're not the chosen ones. Their work is not chosen work. Actually, they're resourceful, but they don't have a purpose. That's humans from the dwarven perspective. So that's also really cool. Then they go on to say, they must be kept in check so your work may continue. Aha. Keep them in check. Some younger ones are tempted to meet the harsh light of the world and run around on the surface like humans. Let them. Hopefully they will come of age and return with more sense than when they left. Very cool. Glowin in the Battle of the Five Armies in different places makes similar statements. Especially when he's talking about giving up any coins to Bard when he's taking him to Lake Town or across to Lake Town. But anyway, so this is just cool. The dwarves are cool. Then you have a halfling. Now this picture right here is of a lovely little hobbit, curly hair, curly hair on the tops of the feet, right? Everyone is happy and tubby in your family. They sing humorous songs in the inns and drink and smoke. But when darkness falls, they vomit in the flower beds and go home to scold their children. That's not a hobbit. That's a halfling in Forbidden Lands. Your crazy aunt is locked up, and no one wants to acknowledge your even more twisted relatives, even though everybody knows they're out there in the woods. You clean the flower beds and oil the wooden facade of your burrow, so the neighbors will see it and be forced to go out as well. And everyone smiles and nods, even though they hate and slander each other as soon as the opportunity arises. Maybe the Bulgers, a little bit in Tolkien's books is for hobbits, but not really very much. This is not your traditional hobbit. This is a Forbidden Lands halfling. Not at all like that. You can't stand it anymore. You're going out into the world and never coming back again. You want blood on your knife and gold in your purse. To eat dangerously spicy food and see streets that no one cares to sweep in villages where no one grins without reason. So that is definitely not Bilbo Baggins, Frodo Baggins, or Samwise Gamgee. Nor Merry or Pippin, all right? Yes, there is the adventurous, you can't stand it anymore and you're going out into the world and you're never coming back again, perhaps. All of them do, and all of them have a longing for hearth and home and good tilled earth and all those Tolkien statements about hobbits, which are great. But that's where that ends, because it says you want blood on your knife and gold in your purse. That's not a hobbit. This is a really cool halfling, and there's a lot of more cool stuff that goes with the halfling in the Forbidden Lands, which I will get to in another episode on the channel regarding the history of these kin. That is for GM eyes only, or in this case, GM ears only. All right, let's move to the next kin. It's called the Wolfkin. Really cool picture here. It says, you are part of this land. The other kin are pitiful and spoiled, needing to go inside to warm their paws by the fire after a day in the woods, and boil their meat so their weak stomachs can handle it. They couldn't stand the breath of the huntress, so they died like weak pups. It's known that rot springs from such weakness. You and your pack live as was intended. You hunt. You howl together and do not beat wood or tin cans because your own voices have grown weak. You will roam day and night, basking in the far parts of the creation of the goddess. You long to wander unknown forests, to smell the distant scents, and drink the intoxicating blood of strange prey. So, wow. The Wolfkin are extremely a bit Native American-esque. Maybe a little hint of the Etrigan clans in Mystara, but still only just a little. Definitely a heavy-duty, wolfen, animalistic, tribal kin here. Very, very cool hunting instinct style character to play. Great for a barbaric like character, a tribal nomad, a roaming scavenging hunter ranger type. All of that being, of course, either first edition and or second edition language that I use there, but you know what I mean. So really cool. Wolfkin is a lot of good inspiration there. And then you have Orc. Orcs are an ancient and free kin, but the elves and dwarves of Ravenland enslaved your ancestors. When war came, they needed the courage and strong arms of the orcs. Your masters fled as the tide of battle turned, when humans, fearing the onslaught of your brethren, resorted to sorcery and to demons sprung from their unclean dreams. Now you are free again, and the time has come for the world to learn to respect the orcs. You are many, and you are strong, and you will show the other kin what your perseverance can accomplish. The clans grow. You will make Ravenland great again, but first, you will go out into the world to ravage and have a bit of fun. So, in a way, this sounds exactly like the orc monster that you might envision from the Monster Manual 1 in first edition, or the Monstrous Manual in second edition, given the background information that's associated with that, habitat and society and such, that's in Monstrous Manual especially. But this is the kin that you can play. And that's not first edition D&D-esque. However, it is very similar to the some of the things that are stated by Gygax in the Player's Handbook in first edition related to half-orcs. So if you can envision that, you could work orc into that thought process for you for old school. But it's actually called an orc in Forbidden Lands. But their story is much richer than just a little bit that's here. That makes this even more playable. And I love that picture of that hunched over orc here with that big spiked mace and that bloody jagged sword with the skull on the guard. Near the cross guard of bones or horn or whatever that is there. The decorations there, just that look on his face, just really, really cool picture. Again, if playing those other kind of races like these is not your thing, that's okay, but Forbidden Lands, it's definitely a thing. And it's part of the history. All right, last one here, Goblin. The elders say you are the dark brothers of the Halflings. Like you care. I'm changing that a little bit there, okay? All you know is that you live while the lard bags don't even try. What do halflings know about howling with wolves? Licking blood off dripper trees under a full moon? Or rolling around among the nettles? If you didn't keep night watch over their pretty villages, trolls and wolfkin would have torn them apart a long time ago. You say enough and be gone with that. The world's out there, swollen with smells and flavor and silver and thrills. You'll be taking off into the dark, fingers dug deep into your wolf's fur. Froth washing your face. The night's alive, and you're the ones living it. Such a cool picture there of that goblin on his wolf. I just really, really like that picture there. Again, if Goblin isn't your thing, it's a thing here in Forbidden Lands, and you really ought to lean into this stuff and try this in Forbidden Lands. And I would encourage you, you will get a good deal of old school feel out of Forbidden Lands. Free League is just so awesome with this stuff and really bringing the gritty feel to this game. Even if these other races are not your thing, give it a try here in Forbidden Lands. I guarantee you it will be cool to play, because when you get to the Game Master information about these different kin, you will just really be smiling and really understand why they're included there and how they're richly included in the history of Forbidden Lands, and what a rich background these different kin have that will enrich the play experience for you on the other side of the screen, who as a GM, you might be hesitant to have people play these quote-unquote humanoid type characters like that if you're so bent on just first edition sensibilities, if you will, that you don't want to stray outside of anything other than elf, half-elf, human, halfling, gnome, dwarf, half-orc. Give it a try. All right. Next time we're going to cover, again, from a first edition AD&D perspective, since that's my background, these professions, which would be classes in first edition. And we're going to cover those in some detail, and I'm going to cross-compare those like I did the kin or the races here from Forbidden Lands. I would encourage you to check out Forbidden Lands and the engine in which how this plays, in which this operates. It is the same engine that is used for Coriolis, one of the other games, and the same engine that is used for Mutant Year Zero, and then their other line within there, which is GenLab Alpha, Mechatron, and Elysium. Those are all really, really cool, and I will get to those later on down the line. Free League has just been already awesome to work with. They got some fantastic stuff here, and so I hope you'll lean into this with me as we go through this, and you'll like this stuff. Now, let me also say, I'd like you to make some comments and get some discussion going, because I'd really like some good ideas about transitioning players from new system play and style of play and thinking, and transferring them or translating them over to become players that are able to walk around and move around and play around in an open world, doing this hex crawling type of thing, like I said before. put some of that stuff in the comments. If you have links to things that could help with that, put that in there. I know Bandits Keep, maybe he has something on his. It's been a while since I've been on his channel, but he may have something on there. If you see one of his videos on that talks about this kind of hex crawling conundrum stuff, put that link in there. I would encourage you to do that. If Tomas or any others from Free League are on, I'd love a little comment or something from them as well. And I'm looking forward to and encouraged by wanting to build a bigger relationship with Free League and their products going forward to do a bunch more things with this stuff. It's just a really great game, and start getting my family into playing this more often. And so put all that stuff in the comments. Thanks for all the comments you've already given me, like I said before, and please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and share. I really appreciate that. And I think that's kind of all for this one. Apologize for the hiccup and the change here in the audio, and hopefully here soon, as I can kind of dig up funds somehow or from somewhere, then I can get myself a new mic to be able to produce a little bit better audio quality with these. If you'd like to help with that, you can go to my Ko-fi in the description and donate that way. You can donate to my PayPal that way. All the proceeds that you're going to be donating, if you would like to do that, are going to go directly for me, specifically right now, to be able to get that mic and to up the quality of that a little bit, and try to start improving those things on the channel. So I'd really appreciate that. Thanks again for listening, and as always, prosper and good gaming, and thanks a lot. Take care. Later.